Straight up bottom line. What happens if the Jaguars lose on Monday night? What happens if they win? And what if they lose and it's real ugly? I'll tell you all of that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. That's hosted by me, Tony Wiggins, the host of the said podcast that you can find over on YouTube on the Locked On Jaguars YouTube page. You can also find it audio-wise wherever you listen to your podcast. I want you to make sure you do not miss an episode of Locked On Jaguars. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Shout out to the everydayers that join us every single day to hear this. Let's start with what we're going to talk about in segment number 3. What will happen tonight? I will tell you what I think is going to happen tonight. And then if it doesn't happen, I'll eat crow. And if it does happen, I'll peacock all around, up and down this network as we do a postcast tonight. The rewards of a victory, if the Jaguars win, what does it do? I think it does some good things short term, and it does some even better things long term. And then the ramifications of a bad loss is where we're going to start, because the chances of that happening, quite frankly, with the way the Jaguars have played early in this year against this type of team, I think the chances of that happening actually do exist. See, y'all thought I was going to say that I thought it was a good chance that was going to happen. No, I'm not going to try to speak things like that into existence, but I will tell you that if there is a poor showing, and I don't mean them getting necessarily blown out. If that happens, then that's a whole different conversation. But if there is a poor showing in terms of it looking the same way, like incompetence at certain points, not being able to convert on third and short, Trevor Lawrence running for his life, Trevor Lawrence starting a game like he started games in the past where he has been a little bit off and a little bit high, turnovers. And if they start having that look on their faces, like they don't know what to do, like we're in this trouble and we don't know how to get out of it. And you're looking around and the people that you expect, like Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence, and then even the leaders on the defense, if they start looking around at each other, then they're big problems. The first problem is they'll be 0-3. All right. That's bad enough. But then they'll be 0-3 without a smidget of an understanding of how do you get out of it? And how do you turn to those people that you depend on to help you get out of these situations? How can you get out of it when those people don't have the answers? Are they going to come into another post-game, post-conference, looking around at each other, wondering what's wrong? Now, I'll talk about in segment number 2, what happens if they get it right, because if they get it right, they kind of, I'm not going to give it away. But we will get to that in segment number 2. I want to talk about the ramifications for a bad loss. My man Joe Marino, when we did our crossover, had some very interesting things to say. And it's the sentiment that I have, and it's the sentiment of a lot of people from around the NFL when it comes to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I want y'all to listen to it real quick.
I hate to use the word desperate in week 3, but Tony, they can't fall 0-3 to Jaguars. That's a tough spot to be. I know that they've gotten out of some holes in the past, right? But that's going to be a really, really tough situation, especially listening to Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence coming out of the Cleveland game and the messaging. It feels like this is a huge moment for Jacksonville in this season. Maybe a road trip against an AFC contender is exactly what they want to get their season on track. And I think the Bills need to be ready for, to some level, a desperate Jacksonville team that's looking to get their, to get the season going. And Doug Peterson, I have questions about him. I think in 2 situations now we've seen the more his fingerprints get on an operation, the worse it gets. I thought he caught lightning in a bottle in 2017. Yeah. And congratulations, they won the Super Bowl. And that's going to get you a lot of opportunity. But I'm concerned how things played out in Philly. I'm concerned to how things are playing out in Jacksonville. I will say this, though. He's creative.
Yeah, he's definitely a creative coach, and he can figure some things out. But creativity is not something that you can constantly depend on as something to lead with. The bottom line is, if you notice something going on around the league, there was a renaissance a few years ago where it appeared that even in college football, 7-on-7 and all of these little different routes and these different concepts kind of took over, and it kind of bled into college, and then it kind of bled from college into the pros. But what happened is people started really, really forgetting that NFL coaches are NFL coaches for a reason, and they got there doing things a certain way. If you notice that the scoring is down, you got people on TV talking about coming up out of certain defenses and making certain defenses illegal. No. What it is these guys have just figured it out. And they've tapped into making teams be very, very patient. Not only do teams have to be extremely patient, they have to be extremely accurate and precise when given their opportunities. The Jaguars have not been accurate and precise and have their thing down to the point where, okay, if that's what you're going to do, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to execute it every single time. How many times have they given up third and short when it seems like every other team in the league that is any good knows how to convert on third and short? This is a game about blocking and tackling. Blocking and tackling is something that the Buffalo Bills do very, very well. So anybody thinking that, well, all of these teams that lost yesterday that were sitting there and they got upset, maybe the Jaguars can do that. Not if they don't out block and out tackle people. It's not going to just be some like somebody put a root on all of these teams that's supposed to win and then they didn't win. They got out blocked and out tackled. I said blocker, but thank you very much. But they got out blocked and out tackled. Are the Jaguars prepared to do that? I can see them out tackling people with their front seven. I can't see them out blocking anybody, especially a line like that that's willing to run the ball right down your throat. And then it has a quarterback that knows how to tuck it and go get first downs with his legs. And he's been using his weapons very, very well. I'm going to tell you something. If they look disjointed, now if they get blown out, that's a whole nother story. If they get blown out, you're going to start hearing some real serious stuff going on. But if they lose a close game and you can point to the 3 or 4 plays where they were totally disjointed, and we pointed to them in Miami and we pointed to them versus Cleveland, then it'll just appear that they're a team that just doesn't do the small things well, and they lack concentration and they lack discipline. And then that's a long-term discussion that has to be had. And I'm quite sure it's going to start happening. Y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. But we ain't going to fire nobody today. At least I'm going to give them opportunity. I'm going to tell you how they can win and what will happen if the Jaguars do manage to win the game tonight on the road against the Bills. We'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. How many of y'all watching the game with somebody and you worried about what the food gonna taste like when you get there? Well, never fret, because when you walk in there and if it ain't right, just whip your phone out, download the DoorDash app, and order some of your favorites from your favorite local restaurants. That's right. And when you're there, use the promo code LOCKEDFALL24. That's LOCKEDFAL24 for 50% off, up to a $10 value when you spend $15 more on your first order. Limited time offer, terms apply. Promo is not valid with orders containing alcohol. DoorDash, your game day to greatness, your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now to order your game day favorites. Must be 21 and older to order alcohol. Drink responsibly. Alcohol available only in select markets. All right, segment number 2 here on Locked On Jaguars is we get ready for prime time Monday night action. Jaguars going up to face the Buffalo Bills. Might not have the attention of the whole country because Cincinnati and Washington are playing in sort of a Monday night double duo. But I think they'll have most of the attention because people want to see Trevor Lawrence, and folks want to see all of the things that they've heard, and whether or not he's going to perform, and whether or not he's going to step up on the big stage and really have an opportunity and a chance to do what so many people thought he could do when he came out of Clemson. So it's going to be a very, very interesting contest. What I do expect, though, I expect certain players to play well. It'll be a good game for Trayvon Walker to play well again. I wonder if they're going to try to run that little cage again where you keep Josh Allen inside of the pocket, though. And this hasn't been a year where Josh Allen has really gone off statistically. And that's why I'm pointing out that a lot of teams around the NFL are winning the games by running the football and being really, really patient. It looks like people are trying to prepare themselves. Well, one thing they're doing, they're winning games. The other thing that looks like a lot of these teams are really trying to prepare themselves for December and January football. Because that seemingly, no matter how much we try to throw it around a lot, teams are winning games the same way they've always won games. It doesn't matter about all of these new young fighter pilot coaches. Ain't none of them except one, and that was McVay. Ain't none of them ever won nothing. They've all had to at some points bend the knee to blocking and tackling and being able to convert third down and running the football effectively. So if the Jaguars win this game tonight, unfortunately, what it'll do, it'll slow down a lot of the talk that everybody's going to get run out of here and get fired, right? It's also going to fire folks up around here because folks are going to say, Houston lost. They're only one game back. They go to Houston next week. They'll be 2-2, tied with Houston for the lead in the division. And just like that, they're right back into it, right? Yeah, sure. That'll be two really, really good wins. And I know we're getting ahead of it. That'll be two really, really good wins, or an opportunity to go and get a second win after getting a big victory tonight. So lots of good teams. Teams that folks thought were good yesterday lost to teams that, like Carolina, won a game, right? And Denver went on the road and they won a game. So now you're the Jaguars. You can't be 0-3, can you? Is it possible that you could go to 0-3 and sit there and have that record at this juncture and things not get really, really weird? Sure. I think it's definitely a possibility. But, if they win the game, most people will consider that a good thing moving forward. It might be a little bit of a fool's goal. And so the one thing I'll tell you is this: if the Jaguars don't win and the Bengals do, then that would mean there would be two winless teams in the National Football League, and they'll both reside in the AFC South. That would be the Jaguars and the lowly Tennessee Titans. That is not company that you want to be in at this juncture of the season. So if they win, it's them and a whole bunch of teams at 1-2. A whole bunch of teams at 1-2, and a couple of teams will be undefeated. Obviously, if they beat Buffalo won't be one of those teams. There'll only be two teams left in the AFC South that will be undefeated. So there's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity to close the gap. There's an opportunity to be only one game back from the Texans, knowing that you'll have to go play the Texans. And then even if the Colts win and they turn out to be 2-2 and there's a three-way tie, you come back home and wear those retro jerseys in week 5 and you'll have the Colts right there. So there's a path for them over the next couple of weeks to be on top of the AFC South, right? That's what they have to try to focus on. They have to try to focus on taking it one game at a time and winning the next 3 games and putting themselves right back to the top of the AFC South. But if they don't win, I think the season's pretty much over. Whether or not they win or lose is really, really important. There's no moral victories because the Jaguars have lost 2 very, very close games already. So there are no moral victories. If you don't win, you lose. That's just the bottom line. And then to start this season out 0-3 would be a very, very dire situation for a lot of people involved in this situation. And I just think it goes to show that everything is touch and go in the NFL. There was so much promise coming into this season, and to think that it has to come down tonight. It seems like it's one game, but it's really not. At this point, Doug Peterson has achieved a lot. He's achieved a lot more in 2 years than the previous regime did in 10 years, with the exception of one season in 2017. But what you're asking now is like, there's no brownie points for that. The thing tonight is all about whether or not you can take this team to the next level, whether or not you can be the reason that this whole organization advances to the next level. It is going to be the question. Trust me, every time I run into somebody in senior management over there, the biggest thing has been, we have to win. We have to win. We have to win. The stadium deal is done. All of that stuff is done. Trevor is re-signed. If they want to win, this team is going to get behind Trevor Lawrence. And guess what? They're going to get behind Trevor Lawrence, and they're going to get behind Josh Hines Allen, and Trayvon Walker. They're going to get behind all of those people that they've committed to. And then if they have to, they'll change management, coaching, general manager, all of that stuff. We'll talk more about that in segment 3. I'll tell you what I anticipate or I think will happen in tonight's game in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. It's all about FanDuel. That's right, man. FanDuel is the absolute truth. Did y'all have fun yesterday on FanDuel? You should have, because there was some serious upsets, man. And FanDuel is America's #1 sports book, so they probably had all of the information for you if you got it right. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. What you'll need to do to get started is $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Now listen, you make a $5 bet whether you win or lose, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. It's guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, at FanDuel.com. All right, segment number 3 here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. It is prediction time, and I am going to predict that the Jacksonville Jaguars lose this game. They're going to lose the game, and they're going to lose it the same way they always lose it. They're going to fight. They're going to show you that they're talented, and it's just going to seem like they're just one play or two plays away. That's what I think happens, and I think they end up one of the only 2 winless teams this season. And they'll be winless. And 2 of the games, ironically, they probably weren't favored even before the season. They probably weren't favored in the Dolphins game. They probably weren't favored in this game. They were probably the favorite. So 1 and 2 is what would have been reasonably expected from this team. But as it turns out, the Cleveland game is the one that really stinks, because Cleveland lost to the Giants yesterday, and they got smoked by Dallas, who's lost their other 2 games this year. Miami, I can't even talk bad about the Miami situation, because the bottom line with Miami, man, is once Tua got hurt, their entire season changed. So the bottom line is that's the game, in my opinion, for the Jaguars that was probably the most winnable of the 3. And that's why you hate those games like that, because it's like the one that got away, right? They could be 1-1 going into this game, and you wouldn't hear me saying all of these things. You wouldn't hear me talking so much about ramifications and what happens in long and short term, right? You win the game that you're supposed to win, and then you have a bad week last week, and you come out today. If you show a good sign, if you show some good signs of yourself, and then you still fall a little bit short on the road, everyone's not thinking about what if they change, or what happens if they lose this game this way, or if they lose that game that way. Tonight, the folks are looking around. I mean, you heard Joe Marino at the beginning of the show on the segment that I played from last week's crossover, where he says he saw Trevor Lawrence and he saw Doug Peterson. He's wondering about the messaging. And how does a team look lifeless in the first half, the first half of their home opener against the team that they were actually supposed to beat? All of these things leave a whole bunch of questions that need to be answered, man. And it's unfortunately, they're going to have to answer the things tonight. They can't make mistakes. They can't look lifeless. They can't appear to just be this team. I'm telling you what's going to happen, man. People are going to continue to remind you of the fact that Doug Peterson has one winning season as a head coach. One winning season after the Super Bowl. The last two here in Jacksonville, they were 9-8. Those are the two winning seasons. That's the best he's ever done, other than the year that they won the Super Bowl. People are going to continue to point that stuff out, and people are going to start calling him Gary Kubiak and all of these coaches that won one Super Bowl that everyone seems. Mike McCarthy. I'm telling you, he's going to go from the Andy Reid disciple who won the Super Bowl to all of a sudden being a disciple who can't do anything and can't lead a team. That's where people are going. And I like Doug Peterson. I really do. I respect and understand, a lot of the things that he's tried to do and the things that he's wanted to do, but they got to do something. They have to do something. And I hate 3 games in, especially since we saw this team come back from 2-7. I hate 3 games in that we're sitting here talking like this, but the reason that we're doing it is because of how they've played and then how they've looked after those games and the things that they've continued to say. It's almost as if they really don't know what the problem is other than guys executing. And eventually, if that's the problem, then the problem is the guys you have executing. So then you're starting to hear these little whispers and nobody's said anything about it. Nobody's denied it, but you're starting to hear these whispers of maybe some differences in opinions about personnel and things like that between him and Trent Baalke. Well, when they win, you don't hear stuff like that, and you're not supposed to. When you lose, you start to wonder whose fault is it. You have Travis Etienne, who fumbled in week 1, come back in week 2 and say, we need people to work hard around here. You know what I'm saying? So, forget my little fumble. That didn't have nothing to do with that. I made a mistake and we lost, but the bottom line is there's a bigger issue. The Jaguars just have to start being a team that they can see these issues before the problems come up. And they recognize and address the issues before the losses start to mount. And that they fix these things before somebody fixes it for them, right? Before we keep having to guess and speculate on what will happen. I just don't think, from what I've seen, and I hope I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, I will tell y'all in that postcast late tonight that's going to hit about midnight. I will tell y'all, good for them. They did what they had to do. Maybe they've righted it, and you got to go and play the game next week. I hope that I come on here and every single thing that we like about this team shows up. I hope Gabe Davis goes back to Buffalo and has a big game. I hope Travis Etienne runs like he's never run before. I hope Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines Allen chase Josh Allen's butt all over the field, just like they've done the last 2 times these teams have played. Well, at least Josh Allen did. I don't think Trayvon was here for the first time that they played, but the Jaguars can absolutely win this game. But more than likely, they're not going to win it. And we're going to be having a conversation about why they did not win the game. Now, not only will I do a postcast tonight where I hope I'm wrong about them not winning, but you can catch it on Locked On NFL. Now there's a double dose of Locked On NFL. 2 shows every single day. The first one, you'll catch that in the morning with the madman Tyler Rowland giving you a double shot of NFL espresso. And then come on and slide in the barbershop with me, Tony Wiggins, in the middle of the day, and you can hear all about not only the Jaguars, but every single thing else from around the league. Make sure you stop by Tyler Rowland in the morning on Locked On NFL to get the NFL espresso you need, and then slide through the barbershop. We got something brown, but it ain't espresso, right? As long as you ain't got to drive, you can have some of that with me over here on Locked On NFL. Find it on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. All right, man. Good luck to the Jaguars. Y'all make sure wherever you are, you park it safely. And remember, join us for the postcast tonight live. I think we'll try to go live tonight if everything works out and I don't have to record it. But even if I have to record it, it's 20 minutes later, and I'll drop that on you. Hopefully we're talking about good news, man. Locked On Jaguars. Make sure you check it out every single day where it's your team every day. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.